Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another live streaming from IKEO. This time with Thiago, Russia, in Portugal. Esposende. Hi, Thiago. How are you?
Hi, Vince. I'm good. And you?
Perfect. Just double checking to be sure. Can you hear me well? I can hear you well.
Yeah, all's good from my end.
All right, perfect. So again, people, for those who never followed a live with us, you can participate anytime you want. You just ask a question in the live. It's going to be here, me and Thiago doing answers and questions about IKEO, about his schools in Portugal, about his life as an examiner, about anything you want. And yeah, if you have any doubts, any question you want to ask to me or to Thiago, you're welcome to do that. Anytime we're going to be live about 1 hour, so feel free to join us anytime. All right, Thiago, I'm going to start with the first question I have prepared for you. And actually, it's about IKEO, your career. How did you end up in IKEO, and how has it changed over the years?
I ended up, my first course that I became an instructor was in 2004 at the kite show in Egypt, organized by Kite Forum, the known forum. And I did the course then. There was an IKEO instructor course, and I did my course then, and that's how I ended up becoming my entry point into the instruction. At that point, there wasn't that many sources to learn more about the sport. I basically learned by myself, which wasn't a great experience overall, and it took me a long time to learn. And then I had a lot of people wanting to get into the sport as well that basically started seeing us kiting and wanted to learn, and I kind of started teaching, but didn't really knew what I was doing. And so I found the IKEO and said, okay, let's jump into this and learn some more at least. And it was a really good course, very different from what it is now, because everything's changed anyways. But that's how I jumped in. And then after that, I kept trying to get more and more info, and I saw things changing. I became an organizer first, and eventually moved up into becoming an examiner as well. And that's what I've been doing for the past already more than 10 years, 11 years, I think 11, 12 years that I've been doing this. And it's been quite a transformation from the beginning when I started teaching, or even when I started practicing, to now, because all the techniques changed. Everything has been constantly evolving, and that's really good to see the transformations throughout the time. And that's basically how I joined, and that was my goal when I entered the first time, was to learn more, and that's what has been happening.
Yeah, I guess what I heard so many times, you can confirm it because you're here from a long time at IKEO. The good thing is it evolves with the sport, and thanks to guys like you and so many others that have great experience, right?
Yeah, it's been one of the things that I noticed and I really enjoyed with IKEO is that everybody gets a say in it, and everybody gets involved, and so everybody has something to bring to the table, and every time it changes, and we learn new things, and this exchange between people who are traveling the world teaching and contacting as well with other people. So my biggest growth was also when I became an examiner, because I didn't only had the course, I kept having people with me discussing the same subjects. And then when we examiners get together, we kind of share the knowledge that we accumulated through all the contacts that we had. So learning is basically exchanging of experience, and the more you accumulate, the better, and the more you exchange, the better. And IKEO has been harvesting all this experience and putting it into manuals. That's one of the works that I've seen you do as well. As you were one of my students to become an instructor. You worked with me, and you're now part of the training, and you're an examiner as well. And it's for me, really proud to have you in that position as well. And to see all the changes and all the evolution IKEO took is quite an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's actually what you say. Yeah, we met like this in a training, and people sometimes, because I reach a higher position, that some people ask me like if my father is from IKEO or not, because they wonder how close is it as an organization. And I said that's one of the things I have loved about this organization, is that it's open. And actually, if anyone that is following us here want to start the same career, it's possible. If you are motivated and you work well, actually here there is a great guy like this. He's assistant trainer His name is Guido from Italy, and he's one of the most assistant trainer. Hi, Guido. So yeah, it's something which is good because it's open mind, and as you say, I often say, like, you cannot say all we write in the manual is nonsense, for example, because some things we can argue about it, of course, but it's many years of research and development from guys like you, me, and many others that have been traveling the world, discussing, trying, checking, double checking, and at some point we reach such things that are close to not perfection, because nothing is perfect, but it's great material. Okay, good. Yeah.
Just one thing I'd like to add is that everything is built on within the IKEO is built with in mind to have applied in all overall conditions. But of course, some solutions are better for one spot, and some solutions are better for the other. And within the IKEO, you learn is to analyze and put it in practice. That's what I've been doing all over. So a lot of the things that are in the manual and other written situations have to be read correctly, meaning that it may not apply always to your place if there's anything that's kind of maybe better because of your conditions. So it's all about the interpretation of your spot as well and your conditions to make it the best possible.
Yeah. We do have an interesting question from Yanni STV. Do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, definitely. Instructor course is too easy. Oh, it's not that easy, and it's an entry point. We have now two courses, actually, the assistant and the instructor. And the assistant is basically getting you prepped and at the level that you can then pass to the instructor. When you pass to the instructor, you are actually required to take decisions and to be the one responsible. So then it's not that easy. Kite learning is fairly fast compared to a lot of other sports, but it's also difficult. So becoming a good instructor is not only taking the course, it's more than that. The instructor course is an entry point. The being too easy, it's I don't think it's that easy. It's a lot of theory, a lot of content. It's a lot of days put into practice. But of course, you don't gain experience overnight. So you're not going to gain experience in 10 days or whatever. So you need to, once you just finished, you will need to accumulate a little bit more. But it's the key to understanding quicker how to teach properly.
Yeah, exactly. And what I say often, I'm sure you receive the same feedback at the end of your trainings. Many people, they actually say, wow, it was not that easy. I've heard it was easy, but it was not that easy, because Yanni said people with 2 months after starting the kite, their instructor, well, probably it has happened. Somebody young and into sport and that kites every day. But most of the time, it's not true. And we ask for people who don't know the ecosystem, we ask a minimum level to get into the course. And of course, you can pass, but you can also fail, and you can also, in between, having some extra internship to do, extra practice to do.
It's like learning to kite surf. You have people who learn in 3 hours. I've had people riding in 3 hours, and I have people who learn in 20 hours. Everybody's different. Some have different experience, different backgrounds. Some learn faster, some take longer, some are very fit, some are not. So since everybody is different, the course kind of tries to uniformize the knowledge. And if the person has started 2 months ago, but kind of practices every day and learns fast and comes from a background of sailing or whatever, it helps them. And they've been teaching their whole life. They're physical trainers, for instance. It's not impossible. You can progress much faster. And of course, you can get the course if you have all that knowledge. You don't need to be, sometimes it's the same as learning to kite. You can learn really fast or take longer, but you will get eventually there. You need just to practice as much as you can. So the time that it takes to get the course, it's really variable to the people, but I never had anybody saying that it was too easy, because I always see people studying really hard all the time, putting the effort, and making sure they get the most out of the experience during the course. And the feedback I get is really good, that people really enjoyed what they've learned during the course.
Yeah, it's a great experience for people. I often say, as the examiner, I'm sure you have the same feedback, one of the best moments actually in my life is the last day of the ITC, when everybody, the instructor course, when everybody gives feedback. and it's always very, very positive. So it's very grateful to receive it as being the trainer, because people have enjoyed. Most of the people, they were not expecting that much information, that much professionalism, and things like this. So yeah, it's. But then, as you said, it's the same when people learn to kite. As instructor, when somebody asks me how long it's going to take me to ride, there is no answer. There is no answer, because it depends, as you said, your background, your physical abilities, and many other things. All right, good. And actually, we have another question from Stanley. Everyone passes the course. Will disagree with that. You know that.
Yeah.
Nobody will also disagree with that. It's not about riding level, but you should check experience more. Those instructions that have not spent enough time in the water are not experienced enough, even after 10 hours course of instructor.
It's most of the time the riding is not the biggest issue. Some people, of course, come unprepared for the riding test, but riding isn't the worst issue. Most people that I fail in the course are failed due to their inability to really check all the dangers available or around them, to make sure that they can cope with those and make the students practice in a safe way. That's usually one of my main things to fail anyone, is regarding that. So if they're not aware of their surroundings, if they do not take care of dangerous situations that can happen, and that's the main thing for me to pass or fail. And so it's not really the riding, and everybody kind of focus too much on the riding. The riding is important so that you have had experience, then that's the only way we can actually measure how much experience you have, is if you've been riding, if you have a minimum level, because that means at least you've made it. You made a couple of attempts and had your failures and learned, hopefully, with those failures. But it's not the main thing. I think everybody overrates the riding too much, much more than the awareness of what's around you, of where you are teaching, what's happening around you, how many people you have, how to manage the spot, how to manage the safety of the student. And that's, for me, the most important thing.
Yeah, and I would add, you can be able to do a double handle pass and be a really bad teacher. And often it's the case. I'm not saying it always, but it's often the case. Most of the time, like in any sport, the coach of Usain Bolt, he doesn't run in the 100 meter in less than 10 seconds, but I'm sure he has great advices. So that's, of course, we want a minimum riding level. If you don't have it, then you will have to improve your riding. But it's more being a good professor is different of being a specialist in a sport, and it will work also at school. We all remember back in school the great smart teacher Matt, who was too smart, but not a good teacher, because he doesn't know how to teach, how to transmit this knowledge. So that's also the things to note.
Yanni is also commenting again on experience counts, but how do you gain experience? You gain experience by doing it. So either they teach without a course, or they gain experience when they are teaching. So there's what you get, the chicken or the egg. You have to start somewhere. So learning how to teach, learning the process, and then gaining experience. I'm not saying the level 1 is the same as the level 3 as an examiner. Of course, an examiner or a level 3 has had much more experience, especially when you check and you see a level 3, a lot of comments from their students. You can see how good they are, because even if you get a level 1 that's been teaching for 10 years, but there's no experience written, yeah, he has a lot of time. How do I know if he had experience or not? So that's always a difficult thing for me.
Yeah, and actually, look, you and I, it's a pretty good example. When I went to work at your school, I had I think 6 months experience. It was 6 months after the ITC before I went first to Mexico, maybe something like that. But at this point, you are so much higher level than me, and I learned a lot from this experience, because I've been to several schools with people, you and many others with great experience. And this is the way. You don't go. Of course, some people do that, but most of the people into the IKO system, and especially nowadays, we want schools, and any schools must have at least a level 2 inside the school. And people get experience, as you said, and newer instructors, they go in schools like yours, like here in Cabarete, we have Kite Club with John. He has many years, 20 years of experience too, and they learn. And because those guys, they can transmit this information. So that's, as you say, you have to start somewhere. It's impossible to have experience from day one.
it's what I said already from my experience. I went to do a course because I was teaching alone. I had experience, not a good one. I got some training with Aikyo, learned how to teach better, kept gaining experience, became an examiner, and once there, I even developed it more because it made me travel the world, made me go to different spots, which is, for me, the most underrated experience part, because that's really important. The more you travel to different locations with different wind conditions, different beaches, different environments, that's where you get a lot of experience. If you always teach in the same spot, you get conditioned to that place. You will know that one probably very well, but then to adapt to the more difficult situations might be harder. So my tip for instructors that really want to progress and become really good is travel the world. It's one of the requisites as well for becoming an examiner, and it really helps to learn and share your knowledge. As you said, you work in a different school, you learn something from them, you travel somewhere else, get some other instructors, you learn something from them. You have to start somewhere, and that's where the course exists, and it prepares you to start. It doesn't make you only that makes you a great instructor, but it makes you a much better one than if you didn't have one.
Actually, something I often say is, to me, you really become an instructor when you are level 2. So you have some experience, you have had the course, the theoretical course, and now you have practice with at least 35 students and 280 hours, if I'm not misleading. So that's still a little, but at least you have seen several situations. And of course, what you said, Thiago, what I did and what you did, going in several places, to Exposende, to you, I learned how to teach in a river, and the river changed direction, so it doesn't help sometimes, and sometimes it helps a lot. In Mexico, I've learned how to teach with no wind, because in Playa del Carmen, it's very light wind. Then I went to Tarifa and learned how to teach in 50 knots. And every experience like this gives you more. And of course, you have to start somewhere. So Yanni continue with the question, and actually, he said that we need to check the experienced candidate. But we do that during the course, actually. That's what we do during the course. And at the end, we decide to whether we certified you today with the diploma in hand, or we tell you have to do 10, 15, 50, 100 hours extra to reach the level. Because sometimes, yes, people are very low level to be instructor. We don't certify those ones. We give them what we call internship, and they can go with Thiago, with me, with any level 2 and above in the world to complete their training. And it's where you learn. It's where you learn.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes.
Guido is fighting back a little bit, saying it's not that easy. It's a great experience for any kiter, especially the ATC. Actually, many people, they do those trainings not to become instructor, but to learn more. And inside the ATC, there is a lot of theory that actually we will talk later.
Yeah, that was the most funny thing when I started becoming an examiner, that I noticed that I would say 60–70% or more people coming to the course didn't want to teach. They wanted to learn more, and they wanted to get that knowledge that they kind of missed, or wanted to get a deeper knowledge. And that's why they came to the course. And now with the assistant course, that actually made it easier, because people can get that knowledge. And there's even another course that's not that well brought out, which is the coach course, which is the evolution camps and the evolution courses. And those are really aimed at giving you a lot of the theory, a lot of the knowledge that goes into the assistant and instructor course without the pedagogical part. So for people who don't want to teach but want to improve their own writing and their own knowledge, that was the course that I would definitely recommend people start looking at, because you get a lot of value for the money. And it's a really interesting course to take attention. And now the assistance is also formatted to kind of give you the entry if you're still not wanting to teach. Because I had, for instance, airplane pilots who come for the course, and I'm sure they're not going to teach kite surfing. They immediately say they're not going to teach kite surfing, but they wanted to learn more. And then you have the other persons who want to set up their own school, want to gain that experience as well about teaching, also about school. And then you have the guys who will travel the world and work as instructors. And that's the three type of people that more or less comes into the courses.
We have Yanni is thanking us for the little debate. Yanni, it's why we're here. We're here to answer the question from people, because we often hear IKO blah blah blah, IKO blah blah blah, and many things are not entirely true most of the time. So that's why we do those lives, and we really hope you guys enjoy. And feel free to ask as many questions you want, any one of you, because it actually helps the life to be more interesting, I believe. Let's go back to you, because that's something your school, right? It's named Cook Proof. Why that name?
It's a funny story from the Cook Proof and why we went with that name specifically. I started basically with a different name, and it has been changing throughout the time. But the main one was Escola de Kitesurf, escoladekitesurf.com, which is basically a school in Portuguese. But then our audience started shifting. Esposende became a much more known place and much more international place. A lot of people started coming here, and we're talking 2005, 2006 when we started, and then 2008, 2009, a lot of more people started knowing it and coming here to learn and to practice. And I realized that nobody could say Escola de Kitesurf correctly when they're from different languages. So we kind of realized, okay, I need a different name. And Cook Proof is a term that is from kitesurfing. And a lot of people kind of forgot it, because when I started, connections on the kites were loops or knots separately. So you had knots on the kite and loops on the bar, the 4 lines. So what happens sometimes is people who were cooks, beginners, connected it wrong. And so at that time, the brands kind of made up this system that we have today of connecting differently. So you had loops and knots who connected separately. So you have the center ones with knots and the other ones with loops, and so you can't miss it. So they were Cook Proof. And that term kind of stopped being used. In 2014, I decided to switch the name. I searched online to see if anybody has had that domain, and nobody did it. And so I said, okay, this is something easy. Anybody who says it, even if they say it wrong, will say it correctly. And it has a meaning to us. Like, it started with kiting, and it's exactly what we want to have in our school, that it's Cook Proof, that you can't fail and you can't go wrong. So that's the story behind the name, and why did we call ourselves Cook Proof? Because we get this question a lot. And it's kind of that's why we went with this name.
Yeah, and I have to say personally, I went to Escola do Kitesurf, and I see on social media, unfortunately, I haven't been able to come back then, because the spot, I really enjoy the spot. The fact to have flat water on one side and pure ocean on the other side, it's very rare. And Portugal, lovely food, people are very nice. But what I see about the center, yeah, of course, in those years that have passed, it really have grown. Many feedbacks, many students back there, and it's a good pro center, good image for IKEA. And actually, what can you say about Portugal, kitesurfing Portugal in general? Anything that can interest people?
Yeah, Portugal has really a lot of diverse and amazing spots, all from the north to the south of Portugal. Basically, our summers from April to October, you basically get the thermal wind aligned with the isobaric. So basically, you have nortadas, which is the typical wind here, so northwest winds, always coming in the same direction throughout the summer, and kind of regular and boosted by the thermals. So that kind of gives us always good winds to play around. And so all you have to do is change your water point to practice in different conditions. So Esposende, as you said, is one of the places I chose to set up the school, because I'm not original from here. But the fact that it have flat water in one side and waves on the other really complements it all, because I can do all kinds of disciplines that I want to. Then you have Viana, for instance, who's really close by with amazing waves and really nice spot as well. You have, for instance, Lagoa de Óbidos with also flat water, Peniche with waves. You have in Lisbon, you have Caparica, you have also another lagoon there, Lagoa de Albufeira. You have further south in Alvor, also a really good place. These are the most known ones. And throughout Portugal, you always get the same wind. So it's just finding the place where the water setup is kind of for what you want, flat or non-flat, or shallow water or deep or waves. And Portugal is known by the waves. We have Nazaré, and we have all these amazing waves around here. So it really gives you a multiple places to play around at very short distance, because Portugal is not that big. So you can actually quickly travel from one spot to the other and kind of find wind fairly easily and fairly fast, and just change with your surfboard or your hydrofoil or your twin tip, kind of experience different conditions.
Yeah, I remember Viana do Castelo. I really enjoyed that place. It's the waves are cleaner, and the waves are good also. But well, as you said, it's a long, thin country, Portugal, and on one side there is, everybody knows, that's full of ocean. So of course, it's great, great place to change, and you can really easily switch. But Exposende especially is good because you have both things in the same place. So that's always good. With another question.
Yeah. The YouTube videos, this is I'll reply straight to Guido. The tutorials is something that I kind of, as I said, the trainings have changed, and I started a long time ago, and I started the channel mainly to help the students that I had previously to get back on track with things that I have learned and picked up along the way. So I started teaching in 2009, 2010, and since there, kites have changed, techniques have changed. I learned new things, and I kind of missed not giving that back to my students because I taught them some in a certain way, and things have changed. So I kind of said, okay, I need to find a way to give it back to them, and I always had interest in video, and it's a passion of mine as well. So I said, okay, I'm going to start doing this regularly and pass on this information to update the people, and it kind of turned into a thing, and it's now something that I'm really passionate and I like, and I'll keep contributing and putting some effort in creating some content for the people who want to learn more. But this was actually intended in the beginning to give some information to my ex-students, ex-instructors, and candidates who are now instructors, and basically, hey, here's some more info to you guys. And I actually say that a lot on the videos, that this is the instructor part, this is the student part, and try to differentiate what information is for one and the other. And I like that it's super cool that you guys follow us. The leash on the kite is a funny one, because this is something I've changed a long time ago. I don't know if whenever you were here already, we already had leashes in the front. I don't really remember. But it's something that I've changed long times ago. And a lot of people, I kept seeing them with the leash in the back. And I said, okay, let's make a real test, and let's put. Actually, my first test was pulling with a kite, but I realized it wasn't so easy to understand how the person pulled. So I said, let's pull it with a boat, and that's like, if you get a kite in the guide loop, you're going to get a constant pull from the kite, and that's the most approximate that I can do. And the person who was being dragged, because I was filming and handling the boat, got me some feedback. And the one when you put the leash in the back is the worst one. You kind of bend and start going under. So it was really a stressful and dangerous situation. And there's examples on my video. You also have Carolina Winkonska video that I picked up on the internet, and she was almost drowning. The side one, and when you have those little rings and somebody puts it on the side, he also said that it was very difficult because it was kind of spinning him, and so it was really hard for him to reach the release. And the front one is basically, it's like you're riding. I know a lot of guys who practice freestyle and they put it in the front because when they fail, they still land and get pulled by the leash. So it's actually perfect because they can pull it and just continue. And if it really goes into a death loop or something, it's right there, and you're kind of going on top of the water easily to release. So it's definitely something that people need to be aware that nobody else or most people are not using it anymore on the back. And if they are, they should definitely change it because it's really, really dangerous.
Yeah, it's for everyone's safety, right? And it's sometimes, as I said, this sport, it looks safe. Everything is nice because the materials evolve a lot, the techniques, but we always are in danger. And actually, I have a funny story about the leash on the back versus leash on the front. Once I taught a F-16 pilot, and we have this debate, and he said, man, we have an eject button, and it's in between our legs. It would be crazy to have it on the back. It's the same. It's our eject button, the very last thing you want to do. Usually, we never use it, as the F-16 pilot do. But the day you will need to have it, you want it somewhere you can see it, somewhere you can reach with both hands, because you can have one, this is broken, maybe. You never know. This is my right one, and I only have the left. So that's only makes sense. And all you said before, of course, it's true. Maybe you can tell us something else about videos that you are preparing now on the side of the channel, because we are doing something with IKEA that many people don't know. I'm not sure even if Guido knows it, but he's going to start using it soon.
Yes. Well, with this experience with the videos that I've been kind of accumulating, I've been working on videos for a while, and all this pandemic, I think, kind of speeded up this process. Basically, IKEA and I'm working for that. We're preparing videos, tutorials that will be part of your theory in the future. So basically, besides the manual that you already get, you're also going to get tutorial videos covering all the theory parts from the assistant instructor, meaning that you'll be able to get personal tutorials that will help you to achieve a higher level even before you reach the course. So you can actually learn all this theory even before you come to the course. And so when you come, it will be much faster to go through the theory, because you've probably already passed several micro questions that you'll have on each video, plus an exam on the end. And so when you come to the course, instead of spending a couple of days or a couple of hours at the classroom, we'll spend much more time on practical things and training and gaining experience, hands-on approach to get better instructors. So as I said, IKEO is always constantly evolving, and I'm working on these. And it's an evolving process. So I don't think it's going to stop just for this first part, which is now the assistant instructor part. And this was done. Is being done so it's quickly implemented, so people can get more out of it, and that's another thing that IKEO keeps doing, which is improving their content.
Yeah, again, every time the training are getting harder and harder in a way, because we want people to be better trained. So that's a bit answer the question we had before. And what you say, what I found it often as a trainer at PT, and I'm sure Thiago's agree, is like especially the ATC, the assistant course, is full of theory, but it's too much for a normal person, which is not engineer. So what we want is to prepare the brains in a way. So people start studying a little bit, and there is something very nice at the end of those theoretical videos. There will be a quiz after each video, and at the very end, the exam. And for the candidates, every question that has been failed will be sent automatically to the trainer. So the trainer, by day one of the assistant course, he will have all the failed answers of his group. So this way he can focus more on things that have not been understood and go faster on the other one that have been understood, which make also the training more personalized in a way, because sometimes people, they may need more methodology, and some of the groups, they may need more, I don't know, aerodynamics. So then Thiago or me or Guido will adapt to the group. So that's a good thing. And yeah, as Thiago said, this is evolution, and we will probably, this is an experiment. I'm sure it's going to be positive because Thiago is doing it very well. And I'm pretty sure then the next step will be also the instructor course and all of the other courses. As you said, because of the pandemic, we reinvent it, but it's a good thing in a way, because people will be better trained. And this answer to the question of Yanni before, like we want people to have a better experience, to have the diploma at the end.
Yeah, the goal is always to make it better, not worse. And I've tested already the first videos, the first version, because we're still under correction at the moment. But I tested the first version because I'm already doing an instructor course now, and the feedback was very positive. Everybody really enjoyed having the videos as a complement to the manuals and everything. And a lot of them even told me, yeah, I really react much better to the videos. I get much more out of it. If I don't understand, I just pull back and get it again. And with the missed parts, it will be very easy for the examiners or the assistant trainers to address exactly those issues and kind of complement that information. And so I think that's the right path. And as we said, the pandemic doesn't have to bring only bad things, and some things we need to just look at it and take it as a positive and turn it into a positive thing. And I think IKEO is responding very well to that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's again, as Guido said before on the question, like the ATC is full of content, and sometimes it's a pity as trainer because we see people, they are like, it's too much. It's too much. So this way they will have the trainer with them at home. They will have time to process more information because it's still a lot. And at the end of the day, we will have better training instructor, because the practice is very important at the beach, of course, but the theory to understand how it works makes also a more complete instructor, because he can explain more stuff, why the kite fly, why that cloud is dangerous, why this one is not really dangerous, and all these things that are related to, at the end, being at the beach with a student, with a leash in the front, and trying to make it learn as fast as possible, with as much fun as possible, and in safety, because that's all it's about. All right, so now let's say a little bit about some of the topics you have been doing on your channel, and maybe some things that you want to say, because that very interesting things. So, for example, the board handle usage. What can you say about this?
Yeah, that was one of my first videos. I posted on my channel, because that was something that I realized that most instructors, even me, I've changed this for a couple of years as well. But it was one of the things that I got always people like, on my school, most boards don't have a handle. I've taken it almost on all of them. I have it on one or two for people who come here and say, oh, I really, really need a handle. And okay, I said, you have this one. And some people, I clearly see that they don't use the handle, and they think they needed to put their board on their feet. And because I normally ask them, why do you need a handle? And if they say they're going to do board offs, I'll say, okay, that's a good reason, because that's how the handle appeared. When I started kiting, there was no handles. And we started doing board offs. That was the old school kind of air style tricks. And then, yeah, board handles were awesome. And then I don't know how people kind of picked up that was to put the board on their feet or to carry it. And it's for neither, because no other board has handles. There's no other board that uses a handle. You don't carry a wakeboard or surfboard or anything. And if you have a handle, you actually don't have a very good point of balance. The wind will make it shift, and you only have one point. As if you hold it from the side, you actually have a much better way to carry it. And if the person's not that flexible, you can't reach the board and put the board on, reach the handle and put the board on your feet easily. It's actually very, very difficult. And it was observing those people, and actually in a course in Spain, where you did your course with Alvaro, who's now also assistant training, Alvaro Selma. And actually he had this kind of approach, slightly different. And I kind of looked at it and said, well, this is really much better, because he had people who couldn't put the board on their feet. And I started realizing and improving on that to kind of start putting the board sideways, using the momentum of the kite, using the movement that you take to put the board easily. It's also how you do the board. Most people do board offs. You grab it on the tip of the board, you stretch your leg, and you bend the other. So why do we want to keep the kite at 12 and put the board on our feet? And some people, if they are not flexible, they don't reach it. And that video really originated a lot of debate. And I really believe that unless you're doing board offs, you don't really need a handle. It's actually, when I'm rescuing a board, I prefer it doesn't have a handle. It's much easier for me to rescue a board without a handle than one with. And I also have, because of these videos, I always put cameras a lot on kites, even when I do more evolution lessons. And I have a lot of footage of people trying to rescue a board and grabbing the handle, and then because it makes it unbalanced, making it a lot harder. And that's how we kind of, I started saying, okay, take the handle out of the boards. I've taken them out most of the boards of our school, and we don't teach using one, and everybody really, really likes it. And when I get people who had lessons before, once they learn the technique, they're saying, well, it's way easier, unless they're really, really flexible, and for them, it's the same.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with this, and I would say it's the same than people riding with a long leash and never unhook. Sometimes we have things that are there and we use it because everybody uses it, and we don't really ask why. And at the end of the day, it not really gives any added value. So, and there are other ways that are better, but less known. So it's always important. So that's why experience, guys.
And question it. Like I used to do the, putting the board in front, keeping the kite at 12, holding the handle to put the board as well. I kind of follow the path, but at a certain point, I kind of questioned myself, why? Maybe there's a different solution. And then when I see something different, I don't immediately reject it. I try to see how it works and kind of implement it, or I just experience new things and maybe this works. A lot of times, even watching the student try his own way can lead to a better solution, because people are resourceful and they try different solutions. In the instructor candidate courses, I always want the student, the candidate instructor, to kind of show me how he would solve this problem. Because sometimes if you don't give them the solution, they might think outside the box and find something even more interesting than the solution you had on the first step. And that's actually how IKEO evolves, by gathering the best solutions and putting them to test.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, as everybody knows, most of the directional board, surfboard, or even hydrofoil boards, they are much heavier, bigger, And you need to do the same thing, and those that have straps, and none of them, as you mentioned, have a handle. And you see people riding them with absolutely no problem. So yeah, it's always giving a better solution, experience. I would say we gather the info and we test it out. And next topic, water start techniques. I'm sure everybody is over there with the water start. So some people might need some extra advice. What could you say?
Yeah, that's another video that I have. It's, I think, the most viewed video on my YouTube channel, because I kind of put 3 techniques for water start. The most common one that I used for years as well, and we still water start a lot of times like this, which is sending the kite from up in the clock system, basically a little bit, let's say in average speed, coming a little bit down, sending it down and back up. And the problem with this one is the force delivery, because I studied engineering, so I see everything with vectors, and I kind of have that perspective whenever I'm thinking on forces. And in this case, we're sending a force parallel to the ground, and on that moment, we need the kite to go back up, and we need to stand up or press on our legs. And this means that we have to do 2 commands, one down and one up. And if we fail on the second one, the kite's just passing through the power zone. If it's a lot of wind, we can just basically do a power stroke, and that will generate enough wind, enough power to just press the legs and stand up. But when there's light winds or medium winds, this is not enough. So we really need to pass more inside of the power zone within the wind window. So one of the techniques that I started developing and kind of using, and really that's the one we use, we don't use the up down, and it brings so much better results and far less destruction of material as well, especially when you're using and starting with short lines. Because if you're doing short lines down up, there's not enough space to really send the kite back up. It's actually quite difficult. But if you're putting the kite a little bit to the side, like 2 o'clock, let's say, and then send it to 11, crossing the power zone on an upward movement, you get a much better pull. The difference is, don't tell people to stand up. Because in fact, we don't ride standing up. Standing up is vertical. We're not vertical. We're inclined against the kite. So this is something that you need to do. If you're standing up, your force of the kite will make you fall. If you're inclined, which is what you're supposed to do, then you're hanging on the kite. So the difference is exactly this. The kite's going to help you to lift because the force is going up, which is, if you notice, most people stand up when they do the upstroke and not on the down one. The down one's going to pull you down. Same thing as a wakeboard boat. The tower, it's easy to stand up. Put it next to the engine, you're going to be pulled down. Same thing with kite surfing. Help the force to go up, and it will help you to stand up. And standing up means pushing the board and leaning against the kite, not really the stand up that we say. And this is something that a lot of people, like myself, because when I saw this technique for the first time, I got me thinking, nah, this doesn't work. The guy's going to jump. The guy's going to fly. Until I started practicing it. And then I realized, my kites are not getting destroyed. They're not ripping like crazy because I'm not sending them to the ground. I do this with short lines with 15 meters, and they start and do their first meters, which is another thing. I don't want them to start and go immediately crazy distance, because probably they won't come back. Probably they won't be able to start to the opposite side. So I want them to go first and then be able to come back. So I want them to do short distance to one side, short distance to the other. And then when they can master it, they can use longer lines. They can use the up down as well, but then they're mastering the power zone and the momentum of starting. And that's been one of the main differences that I've been teaching and that I've been using for quite a while. And the progress and the development and the learning curve when we use this technique is so much higher that I basically completely changed it. And that's why I made this video, to kind of showcase these different techniques, and that this one produces much better results.
Yeah, that's always the point. Experience and trying new things, make it. That's what we want. That's the base of our work at IKEA. Trying to find things that make life easier of the student, of the instructor, break less equipment, have less accidents, bother less the other beach user, because at some point also we are a minority and we take a lot of space, and sometimes we can be very annoying to other people that just want to be there. And so yeah, those things are important. We have a question from Marika, special from Nazaré for you. It's not related to kite. Well, you can kite there too. So
kite, yeah.
Have you ride there?
Sorry?
Have you ridden this way? No?
Not when it's this big. No. It's more of a stunt than actually an enjoyment thing. But to watch the stunt masters, people going to those waves, especially in surfing, it's really a spectacle, and it's something that I definitely recommend to go and watch, because it's you feel small in the face of that brute force that is Nazare. Like it's an absurdly spectacle. It's a natural amphitheater, and when to go? Basically, when the big waves are here. So you have to come in the winter period. So it's definitely to come in November, December, January, February. That's when you have the big spells, the big storms. That's usually when it's really big. Nazare has a canyon, so that's the effect that makes that wave become so big. So it's a morphological thing that increases the wave size, but increases to levels that are pretty much absurd. It goes to 30 meters waves. You see a tiny dot going down, surfing, and because the natural amphitheater, you're above watching it, it even feels more impressive because you can really observe everything. Because if you're down at the beach level, you just see the foam, and the foam itself is 5, 6, 7 meters, and already the foam is massive. So imagine how it is to drop on that wave and be in the middle of that. It's definitely just for some of the experienced riders. It's really most of the stunt, and surfing that is crazy. It's for a very few well-prepared athletes. But to watch it is definitely worth going. It's an experience. November, December, January, February, when the storms hit.
Yeah, and what I can add also, it's now since I'm here in Cabarete, I became also a good surfer. And what I can say, something I've learned with surf, first, you're so small, as you said, but then it's easier compared to wind forecast to know when there are going to be waves, because wave forecasts are pretty reliable. So you guys, you're all from Europe, Marika, Mariano, and so it's easy. You watch the forecast, and when you see a big, huge swell, you can go because the waves will be there for sure. That's much more reliable. That wind, you never know. You can always have the day before a good forecast, and the day after it's all done. But the waves, they are there. If they are there, they are there. Because we also have another question here from Mariano about the forecast, so let's answer it. And actually, Mariano is an examiner training master from IKEO. He just said, hello, Mariano. He just said that he's going to try the next week for the student. I'm sure he was referring about the water start technique. So you guys, you see it's live. An examiner give a technique to try to other examiners, and they're just going to try it. They open mind and say, okay, yeah, look interesting. Mariano also has great knowledge, and he's going to try it. And of course, have something to say, whether positive, negative, you never know. But that's how everything grows, and that's how, again, we come back at what we said at the beginning. You cannot say what we say it's not true at 100%, because we have guys like Thiago, like Mariano, like Guido, like Marika too, which is experienced instructor too. Myself, we try things and we never say, okay, no, I don't want to listen to that. It's different from what I do. No, it's the opposite. You say, okay, well, let me say, we are fortunate because we always have new students to come, so that's cool because we can test a little bit on them, but always in safety for sure. And if Thiago is already using it, for sure it's safe. And then there's always something new to put into the sport, right?
Yeah, there's always something new to test out. Don't disregard some things without testing them. Put them to the test. Give it a little bit of experience and try it. Try to understand really what is being explained and how. That's again the reason why I made the videos, to try to really make it as clear as possible. And yeah, put it to the test. As I said, this water start, for instance, the first time I got this was with actually my examiner training, Yorok. And when he explained it, I was kind of like, I didn't really kind of understood very well. And then I had to practice a couple of times. And the very first times I was kind of reluctant because I didn't do exactly as he had said it, or it was mostly like I said people to stand up. And of course, if you do that, then the tendency was that they could actually go too much. But they also do that on the other one. If they do stand up and they send the kite down, and if they don't point the board downwind. The other difference, for instance, on this water start is the legs. You don't need to press the front leg. You just have both legs bent. I actually got people to do this, and when they're kind of moving the kite to one side and the other, they kind of water start sitting down. So when they understand that, they start stretching their legs to go up, both at the same time. And only when they're riding, they stretch the front and bend the back one. So there's a little bit of an adaptation. So that's what I mean. You really need to practice it a couple times, but once you adapt, it becomes, as I said, way easier. The short lines work wonderfully well. And actually, I actually put always the instructors to water start with the short lines, and they usually end up using this technique. It's also very similar when you have a paddle board. That's another one that I tried. If you have a big paddle board and you want to water start on those light wind days, you can't really use the edge because it's too big and your feet cannot make the board sink into the water. So the only way you can actually start is put the board a little bit pointing downwind, get the kite to lift you so that you can put your feet, you kind of get the momentum and going. And that's when I realized that how this worked really well was when I was playing around on those light wind days and just trying techniques, and I realized, okay, this actually helps me to stand up. And then with the short lines, the destruction on the kites was way less. Like my kites last a lot longer because I'm basically not telling the students to slam them into the ground. And if they fail because they didn't send it with enough power, it's perfect. The kite's already at the edge of the wind windows. They can restart again. So it's a really a big change in my teaching when I started using this technique, and that's why try it out, see if it fits you, and see the advantage of it.
I'm sure it will. Yeah, and you mentioned several times short lines. We have here Mariano pushing it, the Guido also. Yeah. What can you say a little bit more? Because I often hear, and you hear too from people that never use them. They say this is not kiteboarding, this is fake, this is whatever. There are many disadvantages. You guys, it's a scam or whatever. What can you say? Short lines. Why do we do that?
It's basically there's a lot of different reasons, but one of the main one is this. When do we need power? What is the thing that we do that we need power for? To ride upwind or to jump? When we body drag, we don't need power. When we are controlling or learning how to control or have the kite at the edge of the wind window, which is where the kite should be, is at the edge of the wind window. If it's good wind, what we do is we stop the kite at the edge and we keep it there, even if we're riding. So everything should be done to understand this power and low power. And we don't want in the beginning, when a person cannot really handle it, to give them too much power. So what we actually want is for them to understand that every exercise is done at a low power resource. Like you want the kite to be at the edge of the window if you're body dragging to get back to your board. So you don't want to have power. You actually don't even want the kite to pass through the power zone, otherwise you're going to get further away from the board. So everything should be learned and mastered in low power mode. And once you are riding, you understood the technique to water start, then you need to power to ride. And that's the only moment you actually need the long lines. Why a lot of people don't use them, and that's something that I actually been addressing on my videos, and it's the next video I'm actually going to put, it's how to shorten your lines or how to get short lines. Finally, some brand manufacturers are already launching kites, bars with short lines possibility that you can immediately take extensions that make them into short lines, that they go into 12, 13 meters, but only a few. Most of them are still not doing that. But just change the lines, cut them or fold them, which is a lot of people ask me, how do I fold them, or how to do this? This is something we also teach on the instructor course and on the assistant course, how to put the lines shorter, because that makes a huge difference. The best, and it's my advice, and I've put a video on how to cut the lines and remake them into loops that are shorter, which is my advice, because I don't like to have short lines, and I actually like to have a short line bar already prepared. Makes my life easier. So with one kite, two line sets, so one bar, 2 bars with each one of the line set, it's much faster for me to switch the power delivery to the student. So the short lines are the way to go, really the way to go, because everything you do until you're water starting riding upwind, because even to ride downwind, you don't need longer lines. And if it's really strong winds, that's what our instructors do. If it's strong winds, we just use the short lines even to go upwind, because with technique, you can. If you move the kite, you can. The student will have a harder time, but to ride upwind with shorter lines. But even us as instructors, we should be able to manage. And I'm taking short lines for the water start. I'm talking about 15 meters. 20 meters is already too long. Okay, so you want a size of lines that doesn't allow the kite to overly pass the power zone. It needs to give you power enough, but not too much. And then go shorter if it's too much wind for the previous exercise, because keeping the kite at the edge of the window, there's no power needed. Body dragging, there's no power needed. So short lines makes a huge difference, and I think brands will start to look into this more and more. I see some already doing that finally, already giving the kites the possibility to have extensions that are set on a size that helps to teach. That's basically has been my push always into the sport. And in terms of manufacturers, I always push the brands that I work with, and I kind of try to choose the brand that gives me the best solutions to teach, so that I don't have to fiddle with it. And it's great to see that some brands are finally going at it.
Yeah, to end the debate, I agree on 100% with what you said. I always like to make reference points, and I always say, guys, when you learn how to drive a car, you learn on a small car, because for the first days you don't need power either, because you don't know how to handle it. So that makes sense. Everybody on earth will agree on that. And then as soon as you know a good pilot, you know to brake, you know to park, eventually I can give you the car of my Ferrari that is parked just over there, and say, okay, look, it's the same thing, but with power. And I'm pretty confident that that person will do it. So why do we do otherwise in kite? That's something I still don't understand. But yeah, it's a great solution. Also, you break less equipment. You need less equipment. You use less space at the beach, so you can have more lessons. So in terms of business, it's also good. It's only advantages. And as you said, Thiago, it's a bit harder for the student because he needs to learn how to create, to generate power by the kite movement. But it's better because at the end of the course, we have a better pilot, and it's what we want. Otherwise, when we see those lessons that people are totally overpowered, huge kite, long lines, they are in danger first, that's the biggest issue. And then what? They just pull a little bit the bar, it's there, they stand up. So yeah, they ride, but they don't know how to steer. And that's like driving a car always in the straight line. Yeah, you can do that, but you need also to learn how to park.
They ride in those conditions. They don't ride in other conditions because they didn't really fully understand the movement of the kite. When you use short lines, you really understand how to get the power delivered to you and how to go get it. So if you really can ride with short lines, like for me, all the instructors have to ride with short lines. I always get them with a 15-meter lines. I said, okay, now it's enough wind for them to ride. And I say, go for a ride, and I want to see you ride. And the first times they have their attempt, they're kind of like struggling, and then boom, they manage to get it, and they understand the differences and how to kind of generate power, and they kind of understand better the wind window, which is another thing that a lot of people, it's very debated, the wind window, and a lot of people don't really understand it very well.
And we can say, Guido, we can even go on shorter line. Myself, when I do courses now, what I do is, I know some other people do, and I make them ride on shorter line, 15, even 10, even sometimes 5 meter, to make them see it's actually possible. Because as you say, as soon as you are riding up, the kite is stable on the wind window's edge. And yes, you have a bit less wind if the line is shorter because you're closer to the ground. Yes, but the difference is not that much. So the power generated is the same. So basically with shorter line, what you will need to do is move a bit more the kite, being a little bit more aggressive. And at some point, people, they do like, wow, yeah, it works. It totally works. So and then it's solution we can share with the students. And it's only advantages. So for all the people that are listening to us and don't do that, guys, I really push you to try it out. Try on your own. Try it alone before you try with a student, and you will see it works. And then with your student, you will see it's much better. We have more people joining also. Let's say hello to Powell from Poland. Powell is an examiner candidate. He's following his training now. I think it needs one more week, and he's going to be an examiner. Hi, Powell. We also have Fad. It's one of my Moroccan students from many years ago. He's living in Mauritius, if I'm not mistaken. Hi, and we also have the Hugh. Cheers. I never know how it's pronounced. I'm sorry, Hugh. It's also an assistant trainer and an examiner candidate from South Africa, Belgium, France. And with IKEA courses, you can go from Ferrari to small car to Ferrari in no time. Short line for the wind. We all agree on that. And again, all those people we are talking now have a lot of experience from many places in the world. So it's never a bad technique if we all agree on the same thing. All right, let's move on a little bit. Maybe basic jump also. It's something I wanted to ask you because a friend of mine asked me at lunch actually. She said, oh, I'm trying, she's riding a print, confident rider, but she's struggling on the very basic jump. So Thiago, what can you tell us to her?
Usually, I try to break the basic jump into a sequence of events. So the basic jump has a specific kite movement and specific body and board movement that you have to combine very well. But they're also a combination of things. So if you want to jump first, I recommend to learn how the kite needs to move. So the kite needs to go from, let's say, 10 o'clock to 12. So there's a movement going up, and you're going to follow the kite. And the faster this movement is made, and the quicker, the more power is going to generate. The problem is if it goes quickly, it's also going to drag you if you have the bar pull in. So for you to make it go faster and not pull you so much, the first thing I tell to students to practice is put the kite at the edge, 45 degrees, 45, like 10:30 or 1:30. Send it to 12 quickly. So pull the bar, turn quickly, depower so the kite flies faster and doesn't pull you forward, then pull the bar again. This is going to make you jump. To practice this, don't even use the board. Go into a place where it's shallow water with enough depth downwind of you so that you can fall in the water again, because you're going to jump. So you want to fall in the water and have space. And this you can practice the kite movement. Then you have to combine the board movement at the same time. So what you want to do is lock your board on the water as much as possible. And when you send it up, the kite's going to drag you down. So when it drags you down, you want to depower the bar and hold as much as possible by leaning more. It's basically, you know, when you're going fast, you want to brake and you edge the board to go upwind, you send the board upwind. That's pretty much what you have to do at the same time you're sending the kite up. If you combine the two, you go high. That's the intention. Once up in the air, remember, your wind window is now above you. That's why you have the kite at top. But the minute you touch the water, the wind window is going to go back in front, because your apparent wind, when you're in the air, is going up because you're falling. But the minute you touch the water, your wind window shifts in front of you. At this moment, the kite needs to be entering that wind window. So don't leave the kite behind. When you're going to touch the water, send the kite where the direction you want to go. If it's a transition, you send it to the opposite side and you land downwind and turn. Or if it's going the same direction, just set it back in front. This is my main tips for jumping properly and learning how to jump. It's combined braking that you can learn before the jump and train the kite movement. If you can match the two, which eventually you will get to some height. Some smaller tips is don't get too close to the bar. An often problem that I see is people getting too close to the bar, and then your center of rotation kind of makes you spin because you have the bar too much on the center, and your axe is not good. So try to stay away and make kind of a triangle with your arm, your bar, and your body. Kind of, if you make this triangle, you have a much easier way of balancing yourself in the air, which is another thing that I kind of noticed when I'm teaching people how to jump, that they do often, and then they lose their core balance. So if you do that, you kind of get a better balance. And when you land downwind. You're not landing in the same direction you're going. You're landing down, and then from a fraction of a second, once you've touched, you will turn. So this would be my small tips for doing this.
Many good tips. So probably next time for my friend, I will ask her to go with you, take a couple of lessons. But yeah, what says Thiago, for those of us that needs help on jump, it's important to separate both the board and the kite, because sometimes it's like water starts. It's you cannot learn everything at the same time. You have to decompose it because it's several things at the same time, and that's why it's a little bit hard at the beginning, but achievable, especially with a good coach like Thiago. Tell us about the 12 o'clock position. I wanted to ask you this. It's interesting because is it a good or a bad position for the kite?
12 o'clock, it's something that you can easily think of. How many times do we have a kite at 12 o'clock when we ride, when we jump, or when we change position? It's never a place where we park the kite. So if it's not a place where we park the kite when we're riding, why do we do it when we're on the beach? Why is it a good place to park? It's not. The kite, if it's at 12, the tendency that it has is that if there's a gust, or if there's something that's going to pass into the power zone, because it's going to fall straight into the power. And then it will reopen, regain power straight in the power zone, pulling us forward and up. So it's definitely not a place to keep the kite there. It's also going to make our harness go up. A lot of people complain, oh, my harness is always going up, and I need to use a speed harness because, you know, the weight doesn't. The main problem is you have the kite at 12. If you have the kite on the sides, that doesn't happen. You see any pro rider, any good rider, they don't walk backwards or upwind if they're walking with a kite at 12. They walk with a kite at the side. That's what we always do. We ride with a kite at 45 degrees stable, and we send the kite to 12 to jump or to change direction. The kite at 12 is a passage point and not a stoppage point. So this is usually what I say to people is, understand the 12 as the place where you pass with the kite through to jump or to change direction, but you never ride with it there. You always keep it at the sides. Start putting that in your minds and not walking with a kite at 12. I've seen so many accidents because of this situation, people walking backwards. First of all, they don't even see where they're going, so they can trip. They're just like looking at the kite. It's like it's a complete bad way of teaching, and it's still being used. A long time ago when we started, it was common, because even when riding, which is another thing, very funny thing is people always say, yeah, I'm riding, and whenever I stop, I send the kite up. Well, if you're riding and you're going overpowered and you send the kite up, what's most likely to happen? You're going to jump. That's what you do. You just send the kite up. You're going fast. If you brake a little bit because you are trying to brake, you're probably going to jump and lose control. The easiest way to gain control is to actually put the kite closer to the water and low. Your force is only parallel to the ground. Whatever you edge, you can brake much more of the kite. It goes much more to the edge of the wind window. And you can also have a lot less wind on closer to the ground, because there's a wind gradient. The higher the kite is, the more wind it has. The lower it is, the less wind it has. So if the kite's shape is like this, the wind is hitting it, it basically goes on both, the same way if it's at 12 or if it's at the edge of the wind window. All you want it to be is at the edge. The only thing that you go is because it's faster for you to swing under the kite and kind of get it at 12. But if you put it low and press on your heels, the kite will basically go completely to the edge. Watch videos of pro riders and check when they're going overpowered, where they have the kite. They have it almost touching the water all the time.
And also to send the back very aggressively toward the top to have much more power for the jump. What you said, it's true. And even you mentioned several times pro riders, but I often, when I teach new instructors that have few experience, I see them when we do live practice, they teach the student to have the kite all the time at 12. And I ask them, when do you, even if you're not a pro, when do you have your kite at 12? And their answers, and they are not pro, they know how to do a front roll, maybe a back roll. And they say, yeah, I never had there, because when they work at this level, they already have the kite 45 degrees all around, as you said. So it doesn't, that's one of the best advice I give often to new instructor guys. Teach like a mirror. So if there's something you don't do, don't teach it. You don't want that. You don't want the kite at 12. You know it's a more dangerous position. You know it can stall easily. As you said, it's to pass from one side to the other. So if you are not all the time at 12 when you go on your own to kite, why do you teach that? It's an old technique. We used to have it many years ago, like having the beginners, 1 hour with the kite stable at 12. It's useless. So that's also things we have improved with experience. It's much more important to have the people to learn how to move their kite up and down in the water with power, or to have the kite stable at 12, at 1 or 2 o'clock on one side and 10 or 11 on the other side.
Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah.
Another interesting thing on that topic, like having the kite on 45 or lower when you're riding, is that you really get much better control, and it's much easier to do tricks. Even the power moves are much easier to do if you keep the kite low. So we used to say keep it low when you're passing and everything, and it's the same thing. Just want to have it low. Grande Venancio.
It's people that are intermediate rider. I would really recommend them to follow that advice from Thiago. Try to lower down your kite for the tricks, unhook or hook in, because in both cases you have more control on the edge of the board. So you really can push more on it and have more height and more control. And as you say, observe the pro riders. They always have their kite very low. And if they do a new school trick, they will keep it there. And if they do a whole school trick, you will allow them to really aggressively send it back. And that's when you start to really jumping so high like they do in Cape Town or places like this. So you have mosquito here.
Yeah, you were mentioning another thing of the teaching what you do, and it's basically true. That's one of the tips I also give to my instructor candidates. Whenever you're explaining an exercise, do it so you can clearly see what is it that you're doing and what is it that you're not doing. So if you're walking with a kite, try to walk with a kite while you're explaining how to walk, and then you realize that you actually don't put it at 12. So it's really an important thing, like to explain what you do exactly.
Yeah, and I could not agree more. And that's also something I also say a lot. Sorry, sometimes if you're a new instructor, you have few experience, and you are struggling in some exercise with a student, maybe try it out yourself with the same equipment, the same condition. Maybe there is a current you don't see that removes some power from the kite. Maybe the short break is bigger from inside than from outside. Try it, because sometimes it's also where you gain experience, because you say, hey, this worked today and it does not work yesterday. Why? Because probably there is a difference. I learned this with the current at your spot, actually, depending on the current direction, because we have the river in Esclosende, and when the tide gets in, you have the water going to one side, and when the tide gets out, it goes to another side. And at some point, I remember back then, it was like, why? And of course, with this experience, then you know when it goes happening in other places, why or why not. Today, it's easier or harder for students. It's not always student fault. Maybe students is not that bad in a way, and students are never bad. But sometimes it's because the technique we use, because the configuration, the setup we do, and it's not easy for the student because of that. And maybe even us, we cannot do it with the same setup.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
so if you want,
just one thing. The thing of the setup, it's a funny thing that I always say to my instructors, because normally you have instructors, they have their own gear, their own material, really fancy ones, nice little harnesses, amazing, even life vests when they bring it, they're really good. But you go to school equipment and it's not exactly that, because schools have to buy bulk, they have a lot of sizes, so they try to buy the cheapest ones. And harness is the same. Some use seats, some use weights, and there's advantages and disadvantages of both. But everybody who's riding normally uses a waist one. So what I recommend every time the instructor goes to a new school is pick up the equipment from the school that you give to the students and try all of it once, ride with it. So you kind of feel how the student is going to feel. So when you tell them to do something, you kind of expect what is the difficulty that he's going to experience. Because if you always ride with your fancy, nice equipment, you will have a problem understanding the difficulties the student is experiencing. If you have a life vest that's actually climbing up yourself, or a harness that is holding your legs and kind of locking you and making it harder for you to move, all of this needs to be experienced by the instructor, so you better and fully understands how is the student feeling with that equipment. So it's something that I always recommend to the students, is put the school equipment and go for a ride, feel it, so that when you're explaining, you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's as Guido say, it's so true. I could not agree more. You need to know what you're using, because otherwise it's too easy. And we often see that, especially with younger people, they have the fancy, brand new last duotone North to make some advertising. Very well, that's cool, and nice kinds. But try also the other one, because then it's when you become a better instructor, because you want to know what your students use. Also, this is why during the instructor courses, on side of the safety, of course, we made the instructor candidates wear helmet and life jacket for their own safety, that's true, but also because they experience being a student one more time. And often the feedback is always the same. It's like, hey, it was a bit bothering to have, as you mentioned, the life jackets, the helmets, so it's good. And I really recommend people to do that too. And when we go, yeah,
even just for the instructors, like a lot of times I get this the helmet and stuff, because nobody uses the helmet, which is a funny thing, because the helmet is something that everybody should use. And I'm pretty sure when Red Bull tells their riders you need to wear a helmet, everybody's going to wear helmets. And I'm actually surprised how Red Bull and other brands haven't yet said that, because that's the most visible part of any picture of any rider. So until they kind of, I'm surprised with them. But the helmets, for instance, just give us such, if you have a good helmet as an instructor, and people often because it doesn't look cool, because they have that kind of perception. Actually, if you have a good helmet and you're teaching, it actually makes you stand out as a much more professional instructor. Nice little helmet, keeps your head warmer in colder days, keeps your head protected from the sun, keeps your head protected from pretty much everything. That's what the helmet is for. And the life vest, if you're going to help your student, how come you're worse equipped to save him than he is himself? So you give him a life vest, but you don't take one yourself, and you're going to help him, then you're less prepared. So this is something that doesn't make any sense. The instructor should always be with a higher level of preparedness to help his students. So you should have actually more equipment, like line cutters, maybe a rope just to get everybody. All of these things will help the instructor to teach better, and that's definitely something that instructors often don't even realize. They have just their little harness and their nice pose with the sunglasses, and that's not, for me, a good instructor. Neither it's a professional attitude. You should always be highly prepared to help the student, and if you do that, believe me, students around you, they will look at you and see, this is the professional guy. This is the guy I want to have my lessons with. And where you showcase your skills, just go in the water. Go with the helmet and the life vest, do a trick. If you're good, people will stand and respect you. Doesn't matter if you have a helmet or not. And if you want an excuse, put a GoPro. Film your student and take that as an excuse to use one. But definitely everybody teaching, all instructors should be using a helmet when they're teaching specifically. I try to use it. I don't use it all the times, but I try to use it as much as possible because it's just helpful. It's just helpful.
Yeah, and it's the head. I mean, we do a sport that is getting easier and to do and safer and blah blah blah. But still, we jump. There are rocks, there are boards, fins, other people, and it's the head. So I mean, you cannot argue against that. And as you mentioned, yeah, I'm also surprised that it's still lasting long. I'm sure it's going to be like snowboard. You remember snowboard back then? It was a shame, especially for snowboarder, to have a helmet, like, because we were the cool guys, no? So you don't wear a helmet. And now if you go on whatever in the Alps or anywhere in the world snowboarding, everybody, and of course the skiers too, have a helmet, because pro riders start to wear them. They are very, very nice helmets with stickers. The guys look great, and that's it. So Red Bull, as you are watching us, do that.
Yeah, even passing shore break. If you have to pass shore break and you have a student and you have a board, the board can get mingled in the middle of the shore break. Like Cape Verde, we have that. I had a school there for a couple of years, and shout out to everybody there, because it's hard times, I'm sure, for everybody. But just passing the waves, it's you can get hit by the board that you're carrying yourself. So you want to have your head protected. So definitely use one when you're teaching or when you're riding. It's just helpful.
And more and more people are starting to ride more and more strapless. Now I'm starting also to be good and do strapless tricks. And when you start learning tricks on strapless, especially the back roll, for example, you turn against the wind. So at some point you have your board in front of you without straps, and those boards are bigger, so they can eventually fly better. And it will jump it will hit your head several times during one session when you learn those tricks. So it's important. And I'm not even mentioning hydrofoil, because hydrofoil is
everybody uses it. That's the one who's going to bring a helmet back.
Exactly. Talking about teaching a little bit, what can you say to help an instructor who doesn't have experience how to choose a kite or a good board size for teaching?
So I always break down this into the main things that you think, which is power, which you need, that is power. Basically, almost all exercises until the water start, you do not need power. A smaller kite, like an 8 meter, 9 meter, something like that, will fly very well in low wind conditions because it's actually lighter. And since you don't need power to do body drags or all of those things, all you need to adjust is the line length to kind of adjust that power. So small kite size is always the way to go. And small, medium, like 8 meters, something like that. Too small is also not too good because it becomes too fast. But the average 8, 9 meter will be perfect, and you adjust with the line length. And then you have always a kite that doesn't have a lot of power. When you reach the water start, then you need to read the conditions and then adjust water start, and I mean water start, I mean really up and riding in a few meters. Then you need to adjust the power. That's the moment that either with the lines, either with the kite of size, you give them the correct size for them to be able to ride and have enough power. The board is another issue, because boards for school are often neglected, and people often go with the low wind condition boards, like those flat, hard boards that are used and very good for light winds. And often they're getting put on the school. And that's actually not a good school board. You need flexibility on the board so that the board can absorb the mistakes that the student's going to make. You also want to have a much bigger board than kite ratio. It's a lot easier to plane with a big board and have the kite less correct, let's say, creating less correct power delivery than the other way around. Because if you have a small board, the power delivery from the kite needs to be much more precise. So you need to really handle the kite very well to give you enough power to plane and to keep going. While if you have a big board and a slightly smaller kite, a slightly less powerful kite, doesn't need to be small, but with the line set up and everything that gives you a less power, will allow you to make more mistakes and have more time to learn how the kite behaves than the other way around. So my recommendation for the board is get something that is flexible, fairly flat rocker, and fairly big. This will help you a lot. With a kite, make sure you use a kite that is with a line setup that is correct for the power that you need, and use a small size until you actually need to be riding. And this will be your tips for choosing the right size. So for me, you can teach pretty much everything with an 8-meter kite until they need to go water start riding. And the only thing I changed is the lines. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, exactly. I could not agree more. Again, it's the same thing we talked before. We want first to focus on the steering and the piloting of the student, and then we give some power. We adapt, of course, depending on the size of the person, his weight, or her weight, and also, of course, the wind condition. You will not use the same equipment in 10, 15 knots of wind than in 30 knots of wind. That's when a good instructor is important, because he or she will really see it from before, and the student will learn faster and in safety. Otherwise, it could be very dangerous not to choose well, especially kite size and line length. That's where most accident happens. It's a bad choice, and the kite is launched, and then everything can go really fast. And something also, I jump a little bit on the topic, but I will also say to everyone listening, especially instructors, guys, teach your student to use the quick release, because we see it at LKO. Most of the serious accidents happen worldwide because people did not use the quick release at the right time. Most of the time, what happens is after launching or landing a jump, the kite will fall down somewhere, and you have time to use the safety. And the kite will restart and eventually stop again, and you have another time to use the safety. But at some point, you will reach, unfortunately, the rocks, building, or everything. So this safety is there to be used and also to be taught. And too often, I see too many lessons. Instructor is focusing too much on the water start riding, which is okay because people pay for that. But they won't also be in safety. So guys, we need you to teach this more, to make them practice. And people, riders that listen to us, same thing. If you don't know, if you have never used it, it's best you do it of course, do it safely with an instructor, a day that the wind is not too strong. Don't put yourself in danger. Be careful to the others. But it's something that needs. Same with the car. You learn how to brake. It's important because you will need to brake one day because a little kid is going to pass in front of the car and you want to be able to stop the car. So that's important. Something else about the size, Thiago? No, you don't?
Sorry, about the?
About the size of the kite and the board and equipment for teaching.
No, pretty much we've covered it well. I don't think there's a
very interesting one that I want to ask you. It's how to deal with gusty winds, because gusty winds as a reality, sometimes you have the wind that is very clear, it's better, but some other time you have gusty winds and it's still possible to kite, a bit harder. So your tips?
Yeah, my tips is basically understand what gusts do to the kite. So when a gust hits, the kite's going to accelerate in the wind window. So you're going to get an extra power due to that acceleration. So that acceleration is either going to do one thing. Either you hold your edge and the kite goes to the edge of the window and kind of control it, or you enter into a downwind path, accelerating even more the kite. So that's the problem of the gusty conditions. The kite's going to move into the edge. So how can you compensate this excess of speed? One way is to release the bar, allowing it to depower more and penetrate the wind window easily without dragging you so much, so not making you lose your edge. That's the first trick that I would say. So kind of use your bar movement correctly, so you can adjust the angle of attack better when the gust hits. Understand how the wind works. So kind of you can read that, you can see when it's very gusty, you can see the wind approaching on the water surface, and you kind of can adjust a little bit. But it's really be prepared, really dig your heels, make sure when the gust hits you can reduce power so the kite accelerates, and control your edge, control your speed. It's much easier to control a very strong gusty winds if you're having the speed controlled than when you don't, because gusts are complicated when it's strong winds. If it's a gust in lighter winds, it doesn't create so much of a problem. But if it's strong wind, if you can have gusts of 10 knots, 15 knots, then the difference of speed is a lot. And the kites nowadays are much easier because you now have a lot of depower range. When I started with C-shapes, that was a different story. And really, you needed to dig your heels, make sure you weren't going to accelerate, and just pray a little bit because it was really powerful. Depower it and just hold as much as power. But really understand the kite is going to accelerate, and that acceleration is going to make you maybe lose your edge. Keep the kite lower. It also helps you to keep that under control. And really, when it edges, you're kind of being able to keep your heels digged in. It's again, if you have the kite higher, it's going to lift you when the gust hits. So this would be my tips. Kite low, make sure you adjust the bar properly when you see the gust is going to hit, and make sure you control your speed. Go with a lower speed to have a very good connection to the water when the gust hits.
Yeah, and that's good advice, and that could also apply if the wind is a bit too strong for your kites and condition the wind picked up. Again, a reference is like when you go downhill with a bicycle. The first thing you want to do is control your speed. You don't want to go without brakes, so you're going to start braking a little bit, being carefully. Otherwise, if you go too fast at some point, it becomes impossible to control the bicycle, and scary and dangerous. It happens exactly the same with the kite. So you do your water starts, you want to go not too fast and control by edging. So this way you have control. If you go too fast, you often see it actually, even with students that are not overpowered, as they go more downwind, so they don't do that much edging with the board, they start to get too much speed. And at some point, of course, the end, we know what's happened. They will crash, but it's in the water, so it's fine. But it's because of this lack of control of the board. All right. Margosata, hello, how are you? I'm going to put it here. Anyone else you want to add, Thiago?
No, I think for the gusts is pretty much this. There's nothing much more to add to this subject. I think it's really prepare, kite low. That will help you.
All right. So I think we're reaching the end because it's already 1 hour and a half we're talking. So then it's going to be too much if we continue. It's good because maybe we can do another time next time with you, Thiago, or any examiner, assistant trainer that is watching. I'm pleased to do that. Before we close, of course, thank you, Thiago, for participating. Thank you, people, for following. Maybe you want to tell something about your school, Portugal, before we leave to conclude this little live.
Yes, definitely. Drop by, follow us on YouTube, for instance. I'm regularly posting things there. It's a channel that I use to post some of these tips that we've been talking, some of these things. I haven't been posting so much. It's one of the things that I haven't been doing because I have been working mostly on the instructor training theory that is coming up in video. So I basically haven't had the time with that. COVID, so the school and doing all this work, it hasn't been possible for me to upload more content, but winter is coming, and as northern as I am, I'm going to be having some more time to upload some videos and put some content. I have a lot of things already recorded that I haven't had the time to edit, and I will put that. I welcome you here in Portugal and at Cootproof. We're more than happy to have you here to experience flat water, waves. That's also one of the things that I like teaching here, because I can experience and quick to understand difficulties of procedures on one side or the other. So using it on flat or not. Of course, everybody prefers flat, and it's understandable because it's one less thing to worry about. But when you're learning, I mean, because when you're riding, yeah, I actually like it as well. But I'm still talking about the learning part. But when you're riding, yes, you can choose. You can have flat, you can have waves. So drop by in Portugal. One more people just logged in. Lorena's, hi. It's a good friend. Also did our became is now a recent not recent actually. Yeah.
You met him at the coach
course.
Years
as an examiner.
No, he's examiner.
Yeah, the coach course.
Coach course.
Yes, Lauren, I did a coach course with him. He's also a coach course. Again, I'll shout out again to the coach course, which is a very underrated course on the IKEO. People don't really understand the coach concept yet, and I think it's something that we need to put some more effort into it. And I'm definitely going to put some more effort into it. I was planning on doing it this year, but COVID kind of ruined my plans, because it's for sure. If you're wanting to become a better rider, if you're wanting to learn more about kite surfing, but you do not want to teach, definitely look into the evolution courses, because those are done by IKEO coaches, there's a handful of IKEO coaches at the moment, but there's actually a lot of need for more coaches. A lot of times we go to pro riders who are good, but actually the majority aren't good teachers, they're good riders. The ones that are good, perfect. It's a great deal, but the majority aren't. And the coaches, at least from my experience on the IKEO, the persons that I've seen and that I've ridden with, there are IKEO coaches like Lorena's, for instance. He's a really, really good rider, and he can really give you really good tips on how to progress and understanding how to do that. So if you are not wanting to become an instructor but want to learn something new, definitely take a look at the evolution courses that IKEO has. And if you're a really good rider and a good instructor, take a look at the coach courses that you can learn how to pass that extra knowledge that you have in a better way to the people that are coming to your courses, because this is something that I'm seeing growing more and more. I'm more and more having evolution lessons. I have a couple of videos already on the from lessons that I gave in evolution on the YouTube channel that are old. And this is something I definitely recommend for people to start looking at and to understanding that this course exists already within the IKEO.
Yeah, definitely. I could not agree more. It's a different view than from the teaching beginners. It's the advanced. It's more analyzed using videos, using stuff like this, and it's very interesting to run and as coach, and really interesting for the rider to follow, because they really improve a lot. So we're going to say bye-bye also to FAD, Respect Guys International Kiteboarding Organization.
Yes,
Fred, very interesting. Bye-bye. Guido also. See you soon. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Our pleasure. We have Marika. See you in the wave. I love the waves too. Yeah. We have Valdas from Lithuania. Very good tips, Thiago. Yeah, Thiago is a good coach. You guys should go there. I repeat myself, but Espusende is awesome. You have one flat glass water on one side, and you have a little dune that you can walk in with your kite flying, and on the other side is the great ocean it's over there. This is the flat, and you see the dune, and on the left where the picture is the great ocean Atlantic with very warm water, and good food around there and good people. And we can actually say hello to the spirit of the parrots that passed away some time ago. Was good, guys. Full of great people over there. Portugal, it's a really interesting place to see. And we also have Bruno Vassal. See you tomorrow. Thiago, very happy working with you since 2012. Guys, that's going to be it. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Thiago. It was a pleasure to see you back here. And looking forward for the next time. See you guys.
Looking forward for your visit. See you. Bye.